Hello, hello, hello. This is Carly Smith, aka Dr. Cash, and hello to you. It's been a little while since we've had a chart school, so wanted to come to you today, give a little bit of an overview for our beginners in the group on how to begin to analyze charts. And this is not going to be a full detailed deep dive on charts. We do have that as a pre-recorded training for you, and we will put that link in the bottom where we do go into a little bit more detail, and it's a little bit more of an extended chart school. However, I wanted to give you just a couple of quick hits to get you going and get you moving based upon a viewer's question on where do they start identifying how to analyze a chart. So one of the first things that you should do when you analyze a chart is really understand what is being shown to you and what is the time frame of that information being shown. So first and foremost, the tool that we use is TD Ameritrade's Thinkorswim. No compensation, no affiliate, no engagement in that regard. However, it's just one of those tools that is very well leveraged within the industry, but also provides a good set of analysis type tools. So first and foremost, we're going to analyze a chart for Netflix. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the ticker symbol of Netflix is NFLX, as well as the chart that we are reviewing is a 3-year monthly chart. So we like to begin our analysis with the larger lens as possible to help us identify, what is the dominant trend, and that can help us make certain decisions as we move forward. Now, after that, we like to identify, what's being shown from our axis. Just like in high school or in college, or even in your work industry, you look to analyze a particular chart. What is the time frame of what they're showing you and how you orientated? So here on the right as well as on the below are your axes, your X and your Y axes. So you have price on the right and time on the left. So now that we're orientated to what's taking place, we're looking at a 3-year monthly chart of Netflix where price and time are being showcased as some of the major indicators. Additionally, there are some of these squiggly lines that are going across your screen, and those are called moving averages. And we'll get into that in just a little bit of time, but those are pretty key for any type of analysis. And some of the three that we use on a regular basis are a 20 period, a 50 period, and a 200 period. Now that's just what seems to work with us. It's up to you to leverage whatever moving averages you feel are appropriate for your investing, active investing style. So these are the ones that we just use. So one thing that we do also want to highlight are how do we first look at a chart. One of the things that we try to do first is identify some type of support and resistance. So what is support and what is resistance? Resistance is where the movement of price is moving upward and has come into some type of ceiling, if you will, and has caused the price to reverse in its direction and move forward in a downward type price movement. Now, resistance is just the opposite. Support is just the opposite of that, where price is moving a downward action and has reached some type of floor and is now reversed in the opposite direction. So now the price movement or the auction process is now moving in a separate direction. So we'll just kind of take a look at something that's just very visual to get us started. So overall for Netflix, going back over the last 3 years, you can see we're in a very strong dominant trend of price upward. And that's an indication that we're still bullish. Up until most recently, the market has been on one of the largest bullish runs in recent times. So we can take a look at the chart to showcase the direction of movement from the lower left to upper right. So we know that Netflix is very bullish. So now, where are there areas where there are support and resistance? So on this chart, we'll use our trendline tool that just happens to help us identify where there are some particular support and resistance areas. So I'm just going through the chart really quickly to identify those visual areas that can help us identify zones of support and resistance over the time frame that we're looking to analyze. So as you see, we're going through this pretty quickly. I'm identifying a few zones that will be potentially in play if price moves back to that particular direction. So what we see today are a few support and resistance lines. We'll change the color of the graphic just to have it highlight a little bit easier. We can see here Netflix, roughly about the $420 amount, has seen a pretty significant amount of resistance that even in this current week is beginning to come into play as an area of focus and as an area of price as a magnet. Now, if price moves through these lines, it could indicate additional prior movement of price. So for example, as Netflix continues to move upward as of late, you're coming into this horizontal blue line, and as you can see, it breached through it just a little bit in this past month. However, price has now decreased a little bit and has come back within this resistance area. So as price moves past a resistance area, that now becomes a support area. Very similarly, if you're in your house or your apartment or your office building, wherever, if you look just above you, that's the ceiling, but those that are on the floor just above you, if they look down, that is actually a support area for them. So both the support and resistance line can be interpreted differently. So over the last year, you can see that Netflix has kind of oscillated back and forth within a broader range of roughly $252 all the way up to $420. And we can't tell if there's a dominant trend in this piece of time frame. So what we do is now we begin to bring that time frame down and look at a 1-year weekly chart. And that's where we begin to start to identify, well, hey, who's in control of this momentum? As you can see, over the last few years, we've still been oscillating between that $252 and roughly $420 amount. But then just of this past week, you can see we breached above that resistance and is now coming back into that line, and it could serve as some type of support. So just at a high level, we can see that there are some targets that could make an entry or an exit into Netflix very visual for us. So just like we did on the monthly chart, we'll do the same thing on the weekly chart and look for areas where price movement has started and stopped. And here's one for us right here. And we can even say roughly about that $411 mark is another one that has potentially some type of area of focus where price can either move towards or move against based upon the overall direction. Now, we recommend not necessarily going a little bit deeper into the analysis on the daily chart. We don't recommend that you kind of become a day trader, so to speak, but just as a highlight, we'll zoom just a little bit more. You can see how easy it is to identify kind of support and resistance lines. Here's a good example on the daily chart on exactly what we were highlighting on the previous chart, where the price has come from above, has come down, hit a support line, and is reversed right back up. You can see it just 3 times just in the last few weeks or so that price is moving in a pretty consistent and anticipated type fashion. So what we want to do is just kind of watch that. One of the big things, as we stated earlier, is identifying what is being shown to you. So we're looking at a Netflix chart. We started off on a monthly chart, we moved to a weekly, and then we moved to a daily chart. In all 3 of those time frames, we identified both support and resistance lines to help us make better decisions on where we are looking for entries, but also exits. Now, the last thing what we'll show is we'll take a look at the S&P 500 exchange traded fund. And one of those key things as we talk about moving averages as a topic is one of those key things is our 200 period moving average, which is denoted here, is something that is considered one of those deciding lines to determine if we are in a bullish trend or in a bearish trend. So our 200 period day moving average, which is listed here in a yellow color, highlights to us that we have just crossed over that, and the institutions in Wall Street, etc., some of those bigger banks look at that 200 period moving average as one of those dividing lines that showcases a bearish trend or a bullish trend. So just recently, and just as of today, we've crossed above that 200 period moving average. So if we have today's closing prices that close above that 200 period moving average on the daily chart, it'll showcase that we have now shifted from a bearish trend now back to a bullish trend. Now this line will continue to calculate average prices, and that's what a moving average is. It calculates average prices over a particular time frame. So in this instance, it's a 200-day time frame. You have a 20-day time frame and a 50-day time frame as an example. So really want to highlight that how you can analyze a chart pretty quickly by first and foremost identifying what's being shown to you. Number two, identify support and resistance, and sometimes it's very visual and sometimes it's not, so you might have to leverage a little bit of Pink Panther to identify a dominant trend and identify a support and resistance area. But then secondarily, leveraging your moving averages as potential points of entry or potential points of exit. Now you can see on today's action, you see a little bit of movement to the downside. Now that could mean that we have gapped above this 200-day moving average, and those that were long over the last few weeks are looking at that as an opportunity to exit. But at the same time, this could also be a retest of that average price to see if that entices additional buyers to step back in, as that price is relatively fair over the last few hundred days. So really short, quick chart school. We can talk about this in depth and in detail. If you have additional questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below. But at the same time, don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us directly. As with always, there are no uninformed and certainly no silly questions, because every teacher was a student at one point. So with that, it's your money and it's under your control. Take care.